Prince Harry is currently in the UK for a privacy trial against Associated Newspapers, which is the publisher of the Daily Mail and the owner of this channel.
If Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths truly have nothing to hide, go into that studio and tell the damn truth. Because what I am sick of, Tash, is the mainstream media covering things up, not talking about what's really going on. Seriously, I think it's really important. We need to hear from them. What were the circumstances, Charlotte Griffiths, where you swapped phone numbers with Harry? Was that romantic? Breaking today, the Daily Mail in crisis over Prince Harry's allegations, specifically involving two of their royal stars, Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths, in court this week. Remember, one of those revelations was that Harry had actually swapped phone numbers with Ms. Griffiths, who is now operating as a propagandist for Harry in the Mail on Sunday newspaper, where she is now the editor-at-large. Of course, what's incredibly difficult for this newspaper, and why I think their coverage is now corrupted and cannot be trusted, is that they are at the heart of these revelations, yet they are unable to report them and have to try and pretend it's business as usual. Of course, Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths are two of the stars of the Daily Mail's Palace Confidential show, which has now been left in the unenvious position of trying to cover this story without covering this story. They did so by forcing Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths to stay out of the studio this week. So there is a huge amount of fallout from the court case. We are going to give you, by the way, the coverage that you simply cannot get in the mainstream media because, as I say, they are corrupted. They are involved in this case. We will do so with independent, that is the key word, royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz. But Tash, first, I've just got to take you through this very odd episode of Palace Confidential. This is how the host kicked things off.
And joining me today is a double dose of Richard. What a treat for you. We have Richard Kay, the Daily Mail's senior editor-at-large, and Richard Eden, the paper's diary editor. Welcome to you both. Now, for the Rebecca English superfans, and I know you're out there, she might not be in the studio, but she's in Bristol with some guy called Prince William. But she's sending us a couple of video reports, which we will share in just a moment.
Okay, now, of course, that was completely disingenuous. Rebecca English was one of the main features of the Prince Harry trial. And her superfans will, of course, know that. And Joe Alvin went on to read a very strict statement about the trial without any reference to the fact that Charlotte Griffiths and Rebecca English were a big part of it. Watch.
Let's start off this episode with a note that Prince Harry is currently in the UK for a privacy trial against Associated Newspapers, which is the publisher of the Daily Mail and the owner of this channel. Prince Harry has been back in the UK this week giving evidence in the witness box at the High Court. Now, the Duke of Sussex and 6 others are suing Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. They allege illegal news gathering activities from some of the newspaper's journalists. When the group launched their case in 2022, they also alleged Mail journalists ordered burglaries of their homes, but this allegation was struck out by the judge.
So it's almost like North Korea, right? It's like, this is what you're allowed to say and do not go off script. And then what was most bizarre is that without having mentioned the fact that Prince Harry was directly accusing Rebecca English of unlawful activity, without mentioning the fact that Rebecca English's 2 private conversations in the past with Prince Harry were raised as part of this trial and were utterly central to the trial, Joe Alvin then had to move on and say, and now here's Rebecca English.
Tonight, shockwaves are ripping through the British media as the Daily Mail abruptly axes Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths from the studio of its flagship Palace Confidential YouTube show. The move comes in the explosive aftermath of Prince Harry's courtroom revelations, developments so damaging that the newspaper itself is now scrambling to contain the fallout. What really happened behind the scenes? Why were 2 of the Mail's most recognisable royal voices suddenly sidelined? And what does this tell us about the pressure mounting on legacy media as Harry's case exposes uncomfortable truths? Dan is joined by royal YouTube sensation. According to Taz to cut through the spin and bring you the independent coverage you simply won't get from the mainstream media. If you want fearless analysis, unfiltered insight, and the real story the MSM won't touch, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the conversation right now.
This continues. Now, let's get back to my panel because it's been a busy week of royal engagements with William and Catherine, particularly busy. Here's Rebecca English to tell us more.
Today, Prince William is off to Bristol in the southwest of England to highlight local technology and innovation. I'm off there to cover the visit as well, which is why I'm not in the studio filming today. In fact, I need to get moving and catch my train.
Oh, Tash. Seriously, I mean, look, I'm not being a dick. Like, I do understand it's a very difficult position. But I think this is why you can't trust the mainstream media anymore when it comes to royal reporting. The royal rota is totally corrupted. It really is. And even though I don't believe that for the same reasons as Prince Harry does, it is this little club. It doesn't work. You don't get the truth. And fundamentally, I think this is now an impossible situation because how on earth can you trust a word that Rebecca English or Charlotte Griffiths reports when you know that there's a court case going on where Prince Harry is specifically trying to destroy their careers?
I mean, I really would have had a lot more respect if they'd have just said that due to both, our usual regular stars of the show, both being embroiled and being called into this current court case, they're obviously not here in the studio. I think people would respect it a little bit more, but to just say they're not there. Well, Charlotte, I didn't watch it myself, but she hasn't had a mention yet. But Rebecca's off covering Catherine and William, and that's why she's not there. It just makes people think, well, you're literally covering up something that's so obvious to anybody that is a genuine fan of Rebecca English's reporting. They know it, and you're thinking, well, why are you trying to cover up the fact that it's being reported every single day, although I must admit Harry's probably really peeved there's been so much coverage of the Beckhams because, he would have had a lot more coverage in recent days. This has really put a spanner in the works, hasn't it, for them?
I know. I bet even though he's advising Brooklyn, he was like, Brooklyn, mate, come on. You just needed to wait a couple of days. Like, wait till my trial's over.
You
Look,
steal my thunder.
I completely agree with what you're saying, Tash. And this is the thing. They're not in an impossible situation. This is a civil trial. So if Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths truly have nothing to hide, go into that studio and tell the damn truth. Because what I am sick of, Tash, is the mainstream media covering things up, not talking about what's really going on. Seriously, I think it's really important. We need to hear from them. What were the circumstances, Charlotte Griffiths, where you swapped phone numbers with Harry? Was that romantic? Because he claims, Tash, that he at that point didn't know that she was a journalist. So if he's swapping numbers, then was it a romantic connection? Does that now mean that she should declare that in her reporting? That's the first thing. Then, of course, we come to Facebook and the fact that Charlotte Griffiths claims that she was communicating with someone called Mr. Mischief, who she believed was Harry. Well, Harry's saying, no, that's not me. Now, can we see these messages, Charlotte? Why have you kept this secret for so long? You're now being given all of these stories about Prince Harry, and you've turned into a propagandist for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle lately. Again, Tash, we've got to ask the question, is she doing that? And this is just a question. I'm not judging her reporting necessarily, but is she doing that because she was hoping for a softer ride in court? She was hoping for the fact that Harry would say, oh, well, she's doing our bidding these days. She's writing all of these positive stories about us. Now, he showed no mercy in court, and I think it is a really fundamental misunderstanding of Harry. He wants to destroy you. And the thing about this, Tash, is I have personal experience of it, but I've never hidden what Harry tried to do to me. He tried to destroy me. He tried to destroy my life for reporting the truth. He tried to drag me into court for my reporting. But I had nothing to hide, Tash, because my reporting of Megxit and all of those stories was perfectly legal. What he was claiming about me was wrong. So Rebecca English and Charlotte Griffiths, what are you afraid of? If you did nothing wrong, what are you afraid of? And there is a fundamental question that Rebecca English does have to answer, which is, why were you sending these emails about trying to blag from British Airways Chelsea Davies' seat on the plane. What's your explanation? Come on, let's hear it. So I'm sorry, Tash. I think Harry's evidence was awful and terrible and self-serving, and I think he's a total narcissistic, horrible force. But at the same time, I think the Mail trying to hide away these reporters, it's not going to work. We live in a new world now. If you've got nothing to hide, get into that goddamn studio and tell us what went down, because there's a lot we actually need to know before those reporters can ever be trusted again.
I mean, I do wonder how far up the food chain it goes at A&L, because we have discussed before on Outspoken where the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday is definitely in a coordinated effort to often come together and to trash Catherine and William. And, there does seem to be more of an organized effort from the mainstream media. And, maybe they're getting their orders from high above. That's the one great thing, obviously, with your show. You don't have those constraints that they probably do from, from management, really. So there is a lot where people are, it's not just obviously royal news, it's everything every single day that we're seeing. People are losing trust in the mainstream media because of websites like X, because we can see what is happening with our own eyes, real footage. And then we're seeing what the mainstream newspapers are gaslighting us over everything. So you think to yourself, if you're doing it over the small stuff, you're probably doing it over the big stuff. And people's distrust is increasing every single day with the mainstream media. And then they do something like this over something as simple to just say, because Rebecca is involved in the court case, she cannot make an appearance. But to try and make out that it's because she's busy covering, that's why she's not in there. And the same with Charlotte Griffiths. It just shows that they're trying to cover it up in a way. What are you covering up? It makes people ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I've always been very honest about this case, Tash. Everyone knows Harry tried to destroy me, right? He doesn't like me. He called me a sad little man in his book. But actually, I'm a innocent party in all of this. I have never, ever done anything illegal in my reporting, full stop. And I've always, I swore on oath at the Leveson inquiry. So I am looking at this case independently. And I do think the Mail are in trouble. Not about all of the stories, actually. I think a lot of the stories absolutely came from legitimate sources. And I think Harry's lying about a lot of it. But not the seat blagging. I'm just not convinced, because Rebecca English says she doesn't remember the email being sent. Well, I don't see how that stacks up as a defense, given the email has actually been presented. And as Tom Sykes revealed earlier in the week, it's only been presented because the Sun revealed the email in Discovery for another case. Anyway, let me just show you, because we've got our AI Prince Harry who came into action this week, Tash, so we could sort of show people from inside the courtroom, given we have these ludicrous
what really
rules.
Was it like?
Yeah, because we have these rules, you can't film in court and all of that in the UK. So this is what he had to say about Rebecca English first up.